The Padres and Cardinals meet for the first time this year in a series that is very likely to have implications for the National League wildcard race. We have you covered here on a special Friar Territory, Cardinal Territory crossover edition. I'm Kyle Glaser, joined by the fabulous Katie Woo, Cardinals beat writer for The Athletic and host of Cardinal Territory. Most importantly, fellow Sun Devil. Katie, forks up, always.
Oh my gosh, we were so in sync there. I knew you were going to do that.
Oh yeah, have to. Got to rep, always. Katie, thank you so much for joining us. This is going to be an interesting series. The Padres are a team that is fighting for a wild card spot. They've been kind of on the fringes most of the year. They've been playing well recently. The Cardinals a little bit behind them. What are you going to be watching for this series, and how do you see this playing out?
Well, this is such a difficult series to kind of predict. It's a 4-game series right ahead of the trade deadline with two teams where I think the Padres are more inclined to buy this year. The Cardinals are kind of still straddling that fence on what they should do. This was supposed to be a transition year for St. Louis, as I'm sure most baseball fans are aware. They weren't necessarily supposed to compete this year, but they did, and they really performed outside of expectations in the first half. And then July hit and they kind of came crashing back to reality. This has not been a good month for them, especially their rotation. So President of Baseball Operations, John Mozeliak, has said ahead of this will be his last season in this position for the Cardinals, has said he's willing to wait up to 72 hours before the trade deadline to fully decide if the Cardinals will incrementally buy or soft sell. And the Padres very much have the Cardinals' fate in their hands here.
Yeah, and on the Padres side of things, AJ Preller has said he's going to let the team determine what he does, whether they buy a little bit, whether they buy aggressively, or at one point it looked like that might even mean sell. The Padres have been playing much, much better in July. There was a stretch where they were coming real close to back down to 500 after that hot start. They were falling 6, 7, 8 games behind the Dodgers in the division. They've been picking it up a little bit. They finished well before the All-Star break, went 6-4 on a homestand. Took 2 of 3 from a Phillies team that, frankly, the Padres hadn't been beating teams with winning records for over a month. So it was a good sign there. Opening against the Nationals, coming out of the break, winning 2 of 3. So it's interesting because you're right. These two teams entering the month seemed like they might be fighting each other. It seemed like they were kind of in the same place. With the way the month has gone, the Padres have certainly moved more into, hey, they look more and more like sure buyers now. Like so with the Cardinals, it definitely seems like it's a little more on that line and maybe even trending more toward the sell side now.
That's where I'm inclined to believe that they are. And there are so many bubble teams this year, especially the trade deadline. And the National League is such a perfect picture of this because you have so many teams that are just kind of hovering right, maybe not in division contention, but in that wild card group. And then look at the American League and you have so many teams, maybe 2-3 games under 500, but still very much in the mix for the wild card. So it's made for a very complicated trade deadline. And the Cardinals have a ton of players that I think would provide a lot of interest to contending teams. They have many relievers that have performed really well. Of all the things to complain about for the Cardinals, the bullpen hasn't really been one of them, but they've yet to decide again a direction on where to go. But we'll see what happens with this Padres team. I think anytime the Padres and Cardinals play, it's dramatic. We'll get to this, I know, but the Mike Shildt relation here makes things a little bit more personal as well. It's just a very complicated time to be a Cardinals fan because for so many years, you were used to the Cardinals just contending no matter what. Yep. And now all of a sudden they're going to have a new front office take over in 2026. Chaim Bloom, formerly of the Red Sox, will take over for John Mozeliak. The Cardinals are taking a step back. They're cutting payroll. They're trying to revert back to being a draft and development club, which is what they were doing when they were in their prime. They got away from that. They got away from the Cardinal way, if you will. So as they try to find their way back, that's kind of what sparked this transition season. In the first half, they had a ton of players maybe outperform expectations. Their starting rotation was really good. The Cardinals, stop me if you heard this before, have a pitch-to-contact pitching staff, and that has really caught up to them in June and July. Coming into this month, Cardinals starters have an ERA over 7 collectively. So that has really led to their drop-off in their wins lately. So I think the Cardinals are leaning more towards the soft sell, but again, nothing definitive. It's really hard for this organization to sell. They've done it just once in almost 2 decades. So it's going to take a pretty significant drop-off for them to go all the way. But I do think with the way things stand heading into this series, the most likely path for this Cardinals team is that soft sell route.
Yeah, and that's why this series is going to be so fascinating. You could see this be the series where the Padres kind of kick the Cardinals hard over that line where it's like, okay, you're definitely sellers now. You could also see maybe if the Cardinals have a good series against the Padres, they may stay in it a little bit. And also the Padres will have to take a look at what they feel like they can really accomplish. Katie, in terms of on-field matchups, you mentioned the Cardinals pitching staff. That's been a real struggle for them recently. The Padres offense has been their weak spot the entire year. Now they've been hitting better recently. I feel like from the Padres perspective, that's going to be the key matchup to watch. You trust the Padres pitching staff to, hold most of their opponents in that 3-4 run range. It's just a matter of, okay, is their offense going to score 2 runs or 5 runs? Because that's really the range they've been in most of the year. And a lot of times it's not been enough to win, but there's also been some times they pulled out these 1-0, 2-1, 3-2 wins. So I do feel like from the Padres perspective, the matchup to watch is the Padres lineup versus Cardinals pitching staff.
Well, based on how the Cardinals rotation has looked as of late, I think 5 earned runs is more likely than 2. It has really not been good for St. Louis because they have. We've gone over this for years with the Cardinals staff. The names have changed, but the strategy has not. They have for so long been so big on the pitch to contact.
Yeah.
And manager Ollie Marmol says this a lot. You live and you die by the pitch to contact. You're just hoping that these balls are at people, and that's uncontrollable. And you have Sonny Gray, who I think has thrown some really nice games for the Cardinals lately, but certainly has not put forth the numbers overall from a season standpoint that the Cardinals would have wanted him to. You have Eric Fetty, who struggled of late. Miles Michaelis, same thing. Andre Palante, Matthew Liberatore, 2 young guys, but still not a lot of swing and miss in their game. Yeah. Michael McGreevy might be up in the rotation, might not be. He actually grew up a Padres fan, so I'm sure he would love to pitch against San Diego. And while he's probably one of your better options for the rotation right now, he still is a pitch to contact guy. So the Cardinals just love to play with fire with their rotation. They did a nice job in the first half of limiting damage, but in June and especially July, the wheels have really come off. And this is a rotation that has just not really given the offense much of a chance to stay in the game. We'll take it back to the Diamondback series last weekend. Yeah. They went Palante, Sonny Gray, Miles Michaelis. And by the 3rd inning of each of those 3 games, the Cardinals were completely out of it. Palante allowed, I believe, 6 earned runs. Yeah. Sonny Gray, 8. Miles Michaelis, 5, excuse me. Yeah. And when you have an offense that is missing a Lars Nootbaar like the Cardinals will be, no Nolan Gorman, and a Nolan Arenado that has really struggled this season, it doesn't bode well for success when your rotation is consistently giving up that many runs early in the ballgame.
Yeah, and the Padres are an offense that does not strike out very often. This is a team that really prides itself on making a lot of contact. There's not a lot of power here, not a lot of home runs. We have a pitch to contact pitching staff against a contact heavy offense. In a lot of ways, the Cardinals defense and how it performs might be what kind of tilts the series a little bit here. The Padres, when they are right, and they have been up and down with this all year, are a team that plays an aggressive, kinetic style of baseball, constantly on the move, a lot of hit and runs, a lot of stolen bases, just continually putting pressure on defenses, even aggressive sends on first to thirds or scoring from second, sack flies. There have been more than a few times you could see outfielders surprised runners going, and as such, the throws offline or late. The Padres really thrive on putting pressure on opposing defenses, and more often than not, eventually they crack. Defense is something for the Cardinals that over the years has been really inconsistent. There was a point in the mid-2010s, they were one of the worst defensive teams. The Aledmus Diaz at shortstop years were unwatchable. And then they got a really good defense when you had Arenado and Goldschmidt on the corners. Things were getting better. How has this team's defensive performance been this year? Because I do think that's going to come up this series, just given the pitching style of the Cardinals, the hitting style of the Padres, and just the type of game they like to play.
Well, I think this Cardinals defense, especially on the infield, is pretty rock solid. Nolan Arenado might not be having the offensive year that he wants, but he has put on some vintage performances at the hot corner. I love watching Cardinals Padres because you see 2 of the best third basemen in the game, and Nolan Arenado and Manny Machado going at it. So it makes for some great times at third base. Mason Wynn is a stud defensively at shortstop. Brennan Donovan, the Cardinals' lone all-star, is really transformed into an above-average second baseman. And Wilson Contreras, who, as you may recall, the Cardinals signed to be a catcher, is no longer a catcher. He's their everyday first baseman, and he's done a fantastic job at first base. So the infield has been pretty locked down. The Cardinals behind the plate, been average. The outfield is where things might get away from you. They have a stud in center field and Victor Scott II. He can really go get it. Yep. But without Lars Nootbaar again in left field, he's on the injured list with some rib discomfort. The Cardinals will turn to Alec Burleson and Jordan Walker, guys that did not project to be true outfielders. Yeah. Still a work in progress. I think Burleson deserves a ton of credit for how he's handled that move. And Jordan Walker, He's played in just less than 60 games because he's been on the injured list twice this year. It's been a slow and steady development for him. So, well, okay, you said it. Padres don't strike out a lot. They hit the ball, put it in play, a lot of contact. If they just keep it on the infield, the Cardinals have a chance. But it goes back to our original point. You can't control where these balls are hit to. So this could be a pretty big series for the Padres offense and could essentially put the nail in the coffin of the Cardinal season.
Yeah, and we're starting to see some really key components of the Padres offense pick it up after struggling most of the year. Xander Bogaerts, people were ready to run him out of San Diego.
Mhm.
He was objectively one of the worst hitters in baseball with an OPS in the mid to low 600s most of the year. He's been on fire recently. He's been rocketing doubles into the gaps like his Boston days, a couple home runs here and there. Manny Machado's been great all year. Fernando Tatis Jr., great start. Terrible, terrible 7-week stretch. He's been coming out of it. We're seeing more consistent contact from him. Jake Cronenworth is starting to, hit doubles into the gaps again, which is his game. So I do think it's going to be an interesting time just because the Padres offense, again, it's still not great. You see them, they busted out for 7 runs against the Nationals. Then they struggled to score the next day. And then they scored 8. And they've had a couple of these games where it's like, oh, maybe they're figuring it out. And then they'll score 1 or 2 runs for 2 of the next 3 games. So it's not consistent yet, but I do think it'll be interesting. It's funny you mentioning all these names. During my time at Baseball America, the Cardinals were one of my systems. So I wrote up all these guys coming up through the minors. And, it's funny. I wrote the Cardinals Devil Magic cover story, and Brendan Donovan is certainly the next chapter of that. It's amazing how it just keeps going. But you mentioned Jordan Walker in the outfield, and that was a situation where there was even a series in San Diego. I remember, I think you were there too, and we talked about him, and it was hard to watch. You really felt for the kid because he just clearly did not have anywhere near the time or skill development needed to be an even playable major league outfielder. He had barely played the position before they brought him up. How has he developed as an outfielder? Has there been improvement there?
There's been improvement. One of the Cardinals' big offseason acquisitions. I say that with just a little bit of snark because they only made one. But
Phil
from
Maton counts, right?
no, he's actually a great signing, all things considered.
Former Padre, too.
Hey, if you're going to sign one player, make it a good one.
Yes.
The Cardinals revamped their coaching staff, and they brought in former Cardinal John Jay, and he has worked
And
relentlessly.
Former
Padre, that's correct. I thought so. He's really helped Jordan Walker adjust to the outfield, and the Cardinals never projected Jordan Walker to be a Gold Glove right fielder, but it is so much better than where it was last year or 2 years ago. Offensively, he's still working through the same struggles, and again, with the 2 separate stints on the injured list, he just hasn't seen a lot of playing time.
Yeah.
He should see consistent playing time with Nolan Gorman and Lars Nootbaar on the injured list. But it just kind of baffles my mind on his whole development through the Cardinals minor league system. And I mean, I don't even know how they got here with him. And it really kind of makes me feel like it's a little unfair for Jordan Walker, who had such a promising career as a top prospect, a first-round draft pick.
Yep.
And you know this because you followed his career in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
To give him just 6 weeks to acclimate to the outfield and then call him up to the 2023 opening day roster well before he was ready, send him down when he was one of the top performing offensive players. And I just thought they completely mismanaged his entire early career. Now they've given him plenty of opportunity this year to go out and try to be better, to produce more, to be a better outfielder, be a better hitter. And he hasn't really seized too much of that. While we've seen progress, he still hasn't panned out to the player the Cardinals had hoped he would be. I think that's multifaceted blame to go around. But it's just been a really perplexing situation to watch how Jordan Walker has unfolded over the past couple of years in the organization.
Basically, the Cardinals took a page out of the Padres book. Hey, let's bring a guy up when he's nowhere near ready, put him in a position he's barely played, watch him flounder, give him inconsistent playing time, send him back down with his confidence wrecked, and wonder if he'll ever be the same player. It worked with Jackson Merrill, and it's failed with about 10 other guys. So they really did do kind of the classic Padres move of bring that guy up before he was ready, and then when he struggles, almost not bailing on him, but not considering the same player. Katie, before we wrap up here and get to our quick break, I want to talk about the other side real quick. Padres pitching staff versus the Cardinals offense. Again, this Padres pitching staff's been top 10 in baseball all year and everything. ERA, strikeouts, whip, opponent's average, and that's been with Michael King on the shelf, Yu Darvish on the shelf most of the year, Joe Musgrove out for the year after having Tommy John surgery, Dylan Cease has struggled most of the year. So it's really been top to bottom, the entire staff. It's been a great bullpen, and a lot of guys have stepped up in the rotation. Their matchup against the Cardinals offense, what should we be watching for there?
You know, the Cardinals in the early part of the season had a very relentless approach, and they might not have gone to a starter, but back when their rotation could keep games within reach, they were really good at chipping away against the bullpen.
Yeah.
So this is not a team that's going to outslug another team by any means. The Cardinals don't hit a lot of home runs. They usually have a pretty good plate approach. Not a lot of strikeouts in there,
Yeah.
but they're kind of going through a lull offensively too. It's just not been a good July. The one player that I think has really figured things out. Look, Brendan Donovan's going to hit for average. Alec Burleson's going to hit for average. The one guy you do not want to see at the plate with runners on is Ivan Herrera, and he was projected to be the catcher of the future. And you might be noticing a pattern here. He's no longer catching. He will strategically be only the DH going forward for the rest of the season. He's had 2 lower half injuries. The Cardinals want to keep him healthy. And there were some defensive concerns, specifically with his throwing arm behind the plate before those injuries anyway. He is the only hitter right now that I feel like is truly locked in for the Cardinals.
Yeah.
Now, of course, St. Louis is going to come home to Busch Stadium after 3 games at Coors Field. So if one field is going to maybe change your offensive approach, it's going to be the one that's in Denver. But if you can pitch around Ivan Herrera, you can get to pretty much anyone in this lineup right now. They're just not seeing the ball very well.
You know, it's funny. It just goes back to show catcher development. I wrote Ivan Herrera up in the Cardinals top 30 when he was in the DSL. And at the time, hey, this is going to be a really good defensive catcher. You know, the broad back, the sturdy build, you know, the mind for it. And oh, by the way, he can hit too. But he was definitely a guy they loved as a defender. And the fact he could hit was a bonus. And again, we saw that shift over the course of his tenure. And again, trying to figure out how catchers are going to develop is probably the hardest thing to do, even more so than pitchers or skinny shortstops, whether or not they're going to fill out. So it's good to see him hitting and hitting well, but it just, as soon as you said that, it just made me chuckle because there's a long list of guys. Oh, he's a great catcher, no doubt backstop, and then gets the majors like, actually, maybe more DH first base catcher. You know, they all work out differently. All right, Katie, we have a lot more to talk about, including a common tie the Padres and Cardinals have with Mike Shildt, how he's remembered in St. Louis, and frankly, how Cardinals fans think of him compared to Ollie Marmol. We're going to take a quick break, hear a word from our sponsors, dive right into that.
You know about the best place to buy, sell, trade, or look for that special card in your world. It's called Arena Club, and Eric Kratz just went through a little slab pack experience, and you went big. You went for the Ruby pack.
I love it. I love clicking on the Ruby pack and knowing that I'm going to open something that is going to be epic. I got a Cal Ripken Jr. autographed 1 of 42. I'm keeping it right now, but I would love to have it in my hand, so I might even have them send it to me. Already graded, everything taken care of for me.
That's right. You want to hang it up and stare at it all day, go for it. But if you're in there to get something else or to sell it away, you can do that. They've got the buyback program, or you can put it on the marketplace yourself. Tons of options. This is where the best cards live. It's arenaclub.com/foul and use the code FOUL for 20% off your first slab pack, or if you'd like to purchase a card, 20% off your first card purchase. Again, arenaclub.com/FOUL. Use code FOUL.
All right, Katie. Mike Shildt, Padres manager, came up through the Cardinal system. He was their manager in Johnson City in the Appy League, worked his entire way up through the Cardinal system, each level, made it to the majors, became their interim manager, and eventually their permanent manager. Led the Cardinals to the postseason all 3 years he was their manager, and then very surprisingly was fired after the 2021 season. The timing of it in particular was shocking because the postseason was still going on. How was Mike Shildt viewed and remembered in St. Louis?
Kyle, I'll tell you a quick story about when Mike Shildt was fired.
Yeah.
If you recall, it was game 5 of the NLDS Giants-Dodgers, and it's a no news day. MLB has this rule where on playoff games, your teams are supposed to limit their news unless you get express permission from the commissioner's office.
Yeah.
So I am well aware of this news. Coming off my first year as a beat reporter, I said, you know what? I'm going to go treat myself. I'm going to go to Target. I'm going to leave my phone in the car. And I come back, I check my phone, I see I have like 20 messages, and I'm like, that's aggressive. I'm going to Starbucks. So I'm in the Starbucks drive-thru, and my phone will not stop ringing. And I was like, what is going on? And I pull up my phone out of the console, and I see a bunch of texts like, did Mike Shildt just get fired? I pull out, I didn't get the Starbucks. I ordered it, didn't get it. Pulled out of the drive-thru, and everyone, and then by that point, the news had been public. And it was just a shock all around. And while the details behind that still are pretty murky and we don't know the full story, I will say the lack of clarity as to why Mike Shildt was fired, especially because of the reasons you mentioned of him being the, you know, came up through the organization. He was like a Cardinals lifer.
Oh,
That
yeah.
has really led to, I think, an unfair evaluation of Oliver Marmol because Cardinals fans had uh, felt a certain way about Mike Shildt, who brought them a ton of success, who came up and really oversaw the player development system before it started to crumble. Because there has been a lack of clarity about why exactly he was fired, it's given Ollie Marmol, I think, not a very fair platform as well, because fans were conditioned to be skeptical about his hire. And then, of course, Ollie Marmol manages 2022. Albert Pujols comes back. Yadier Molina's last year. They make the playoffs. And then it's just a complete fall from grace over the last 3 years. So Cardinals fans are very much invested in what Mike Shildt is doing in San Diego because they feel like they still haven't gotten the full story or the full answer as to what went down here in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And his successor, well, I personally don't think Ollie Marmol has done a bad job. I don't think he's had very many rosters that would have led to success anyway. There's just kind of a general sense of being turned off by him because whatever happened with Mike Shildt, John Mozeliak, and the Cardinals has not yet been publicly made. It just kind of makes an all-around murky situation here.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, Mike Shildt still bleeds Cardinal red to his core, still loves that franchise, still loves that organization, talks about all the great times he had. I can't tell you how many times in the dugout after, official pregame availability, he and I just talk about, because I covered him when he was, in the minors, when he was coaching those guys up through the minors. And it was talk about all those guys he coached, his memories there, and a big smile comes on his face. He really loved being a Cardinal. And there's no question that him being fired, it really hurt. He was very, very hurt by that. I will say what he's done in San Diego, he's done a fantastic job. And look, you know this, I know this. Every fan base hates their own manager. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. But when you take a step back, Mike Shildt has done a lot of great things in San Diego. He has completely changed the culture in a positive way. And what I mean by that is before he got there, the Padres had this bad habit of sleepwalking through games, through seasons. The 2022 season, they sleptwalked pretty much the whole season. And then Bob Melvin yelled at them in September and they woke up and went on a run to the NLCS. And the 2023 team that had all this star talent with Blake Snell and Josh Hader and Juan Soto, that was the most disinterested looking team you will ever see on a baseball field. It was, they were sleepwalking through games. They got booed off the field after dropping series at home to teams like the Royals and the Nationals. Since Mike Shildt has come in, that has all changed. He has changed the culture and the identity of this team. This is an aggressive team that plays hard, that applies relentless pressure. You never see this team sleepwalking. It's little things. They are busting it down the line. Guys like Manny Machado, who are not known for their hustle, they're hustling. There's a great attention to detail defensively, situational awareness. They don't make mistakes. They don't miss cutoff men. They don't have ill-advised throws. Under Mike Shildt, they're a very fundamentally sound team, but most importantly, just an aggressive, constantly engaged team. And I do give him a lot of credit for that.
And that checks out because when you think about Mike Shilt's background as someone who was so firmly rooted in the Cardinals player development system, he lives and breathes fundamentals. So one thing that we know about Mike Shildt, two things we know about Mike Shildt as a manager, he's going to emphasize the heck out of fundamentals and you're going to see it on the field. He's also 100% a player's manager. He's going to do whatever he can to make sure his players know that he has their back, he's in their corner, and he's going to fight for them. That doesn't necessarily make him the most popular guy outside of his own clubhouse, but that's not his priority. His priority is his players. He's a player's manager who stresses the fine details, the little things, and that's what wins games. That's what made the Cardinals and the Cardinal way so impactful in the early 2010s when he was in their player development system, in the 2018, 2019, even the weird 2020 COVID season. This was a team that went out there and did not make mistakes fundamentals. They were not missing a cutoff man. They were going to be exactly where their charts told them to be, regardless of hitter. They were going to know exactly what they were just not going to make dumb mistakes. So I tune into Padres games every now and then. I see that exact same style of baseball, and I see how his players respond to his leadership. And none of that is surprising because that's who Mike Shildt is as a manager. If there's one thing you can say about him, it's that he knows his clubhouse and he knows how to run it.
No question about it. And you talk about protecting his players. We've seen that a few times with Fernando Tatis in New York after a bad strike two call. And then Tatis eventually struck out. You saw him come out of the dugout in New York, threw the glasses, threw the pen, through the scorecard. It was one of the more memorable and
I like that one.
entertaining ejections I've seen. Against the Dodgers again, Tatis got hit for the third time in a nine-day span by the Dodgers. Shildt came out and right away, him and Dave Roberts were going at each other a little bit. So there's no question he protects his players. From a media perspective, sometimes, when a guy's really struggling, you mention, hey, like this guy's struggling. Sometimes they get almost a little defensive about it. So in that sense, it's, not always the most fun. It's like, no, the guy's actually hitting, 198. Like we can talk about
It's fair to ask about it. But this goes back to him being such a player's manager. Yeah. He's, regardless of how it looks to anyone outside of that clubhouse, he's going to protect his players. So I can, I covered him too. I understand.
No, I remember your first year on the beat, and it's interesting. So, my experience with Shildt was from a national writer perspective, with Baseball America. And same with Ollie Marmol, just coming in, doing some features, coming to. So I wasn't there watching them every day, but just, kind of parachuting in, it always stood out to me how different they were. Shildt very much, I know it's cliche, but old school players manager, fundamentals, like, kind of had some, that Southern grit to him, if you will, a little bit, where Ollie Marmol, 20, 30 years younger, more kind of come up through the analytics style in some ways. And it always just struck me that there's one thing to fire Mike Shildt. I felt like they hired, in a lot of ways, his opposite and Ollie Marmol in a lot of ways. Would you say that's a fair assessment? And just how have you kind of seen the difference between the two?
There are definitely differences between the two, but both are very, very similar in their passion for player development. Yeah. I mean, Mike Shildt scouted Ollie Marmol and brought Ollie into the organization. And Ollie rose up the ranks. I think he was 23 years old when he started managing down in short season ball, back when that was still a thing.
Yep.
And he came up just like Shildt did through the Cardinal system. And at one point, John Mozeliak thought that Ollie Marmol would be actually a scouting or a player development director, a farm director, instead of a manager, because he, like Shildt, was so impassioned about doing things the right way and promoting the game. And that's why it's been so frustrating for Ollie as a manager of this big league club, because the organization had gotten away from that. And now he's managing players who don't know how to take secondary leads, who don't know how to hit their cutoffs, who don't understand the importance of syncing up a pitch or knowing when a pitcher is giving a tell or things like that, things that he would have made sure and Shildt would have made sure happened in the Cardinals minor league system. So those are the similarities. The difference is there, I do think Shilt's more of an old school guy, and Ollie's much more of he's just turned 39, I believe. Yep. Was the youngest manager in baseball when he was hired. Yep. He's had to learn a lot as he's gone through it, where Shildt had kind of done all of that learning and growing under the radar in the minor leagues. So I think there are obvious differences. I don't think it's bad in either way. I've enjoyed working with both. Obviously, I only had Shildt for 1 year, but he was easy to work with, professional as always. Ollie, it's been 4 years now. There's a lot of ups and a lot of downs. I can literally go into his office and be like, "What's up, big dog? What do you got today?" Where I would never do that with Mike Shildt, obviously. Yeah. So some similarities in terms of how they were brought up through the Cardinals organization, different managerial styles, but not totally vastly different, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, again, it's just been interesting seeing how everything has played out. Again, Mike Shildt is bleeding Cardinal red, and there's definitely a little extra when he goes back to face St. Louis. Oh, yeah. He's going to say, "Hey, it's just another game. We're just trying to win ball games here." But I promise you, there's a little extra something there.
It's not just a regular game. It means something, and that's okay. Given the situation, I totally understand.
Absolutely. All right, Katie, I want to dive into our DraftKings player spotlight with you and look at some key players for this series. All right, so starting from the Padres perspective, one player I really want to highlight is Manny Machado. As we all know, he's a veteran who has a track record of always being a Hall of Fame talent. But for a lot of his career, he said and did some things that did not endear himself to the wider baseball world. And look, this isn't a narrative. These are objective things that happen, throwing the bat at Fernando Abad at Baltimore. And people forget what preceded that was Josh Donaldson had just tagged him on a regular play, and Manny flipped out, threw his helmet at him, and started a benches clearing incident. You have him clipping Jesus Aguilar in the NLCS, which was one of the dirtiest plays you'll ever see. His Johnny Hustle comments, and just frankly, the 2019 season with the Padres, his first year at the Padres, he completely checked out the final month, just completely and utterly checked out. We have seen him grow into a more consistent leader recently. 2020 and 2022, he really became a leader. 2020, that wild card series against the Cardinals, the COVID season, I covered that. When the Padres won that series, he was the first guy to the dugout, holding up a 10th fan banner, showing it to, the apartment buildings out beyond Petco and center field. And he's really grown as a leader. And I think this year it's been really impressive. He is showing a level of engagement and focus and, yes, hustle and energy we have never seen from him on a consistent basis. We would see it in flashes. But I think what's been so impressive is just he's grown into realizing, hey, leading by example doesn't just mean posting. He always posted. He always played hurt. But it's how you play day in and day out over a long season. And he's been the steadying force. I mentioned this Padres offense. They were bottom 5 in baseball for about a 2-month stretch, but he was the one guy consistently performing, keeping them afloat. And now the rest of the team's starting to heat back up. I think Manny Machado deserves a lot of credit for what he's done for the Padres this entire season. Yes, what he's done on the field, his production, but we always knew he was capable of that. It's been more about what he's done, the example he's setting with that energy, that focus, that hustle, which again goes back to Mike Shildt.
As someone who follows the Padres and Manny Machado, like from an outside perspective, I think you're spot on. I've always enjoyed watching Manny Machado play because of the pure talent.
Yeah.
And over the last couple of years, I totally agree with you, again, from a bird's eye view, that he has grown into being a leader. And I think it is so important to reiterate, your favorite baseball player might not be the best leader. I've had to go over this a lot with different veterans with the Cardinals. Just because your favorite baseball player can play at Hall of Fame level third base, can hit the ball 400 feet on a consistent basis, doesn't mean he knows how to lead. And sometimes players have to learn that as they grow through the game. And Manny Machado is not the 24-year-old, very electric, passionate player for the Baltimore Orioles. He is an established veteran, face of the game for the San Diego Padres with a different kind of mentality on who he's supposed to be in his career. And I do think Mike Shildt has played some part into that. And this goes back to Shildt being a clubhouse and a player's manager. But also I think some credit goes to Manny for growing up and acknowledging, okay, how I was younger in my career, that's not going to fly. And I need to learn how to be a better leader. And that might not be easy for me to do. It's easy for me to go out there and be one of the best third basemen in the game. I'm going to make it look easy. I'm going to post, like you said, I'm going to play every single day. I'm going to be one of baseball's best players. But I need to be a better teammate too. And I think over the last couple of years, especially I think about 2022, he has really shown that. And as the Padres, start to be in the playoffs more consistently and start to be viewed as more of a legitimate, contending, consistent threat, Manny Machado is right there. And how he carries himself, that's important because he's very much a face of this team. The Padres have a lot of stars, whether it's Tatis, whether it's Jackson Merrill, whether it's, Jake Cronenworth, go down the list, Yu Darvish, anyone. But no one is going to carry as much weight as Manny Machado. So for him to recognize that and for him to grow into that leadership role and try his best to be comfortable with it, again, from the long distance view, I think that's really encouraging to see.
No question about it. And real quick for you, Katie, who's someone that you want to spotlight for this series for the Cardinals?
Ooh, well, if I knew Michael McGreevy was going to start against them, I'd pick him just because, again, he grew up a Padres fan, loves San Diego.
I wrote him up out of both high school and college. I wrote his draft reports for BA. So, he's definitely a SoCal kid through and through.
Yes, he's also hilarious. So, but we don't know. The Cardinals have not set their rotation. One guy I'm looking to highlight, it's going to be Ivan Herrera, mainly because I think he's the only one worth watching offensively right now. Good, but it's rare right now for the Cardinals to have someone who comes up at the plate and all of a sudden you're looking and you're watching and you're like, something could happen here. Herrera's hitting over 400 with runners in scoring position this year. Again, he had a calf strain, so he missed a month in April, and a hamstring strain where he missed 3.5 weeks in June to early July. So he hasn't always been available, but when healthy, he's an impact bat for St. Louis, and he can change the lineup. You don't believe me? Look at the Cardinals offensively when he is not available, when he is on the IL. It's not great. So that's the guy I'm watching in this transition year as the Cardinals are looking to build around. I think the baseball world is starting to learn more and more about who Brendan Donovan is, and I think it's safe to say the Cardinals can and should build around him in the future. But looking at Ivan Herrera, what his position is going to be long-term, we don't know, but we do know that bat is real, that bat plays. And right now the Cardinals could really use it as they try to scuffle and maybe stay above 500 in contention for the wild card, maybe not. A lot more than just Ivan Herrera will dictate that. But right now, if you're looking for competitive at bat to watch this series, it's going to be Herrera for me.
There you go. Manny Machado and Ivan Herrera, the two key players to watch. That'll do it for our DraftKings player spotlight. Real quick, want to look ahead to some of the potential pick sixes or pick sixes for DraftKings, some players who, you think might be able to perform over the course of the series, what bets you would make. The two I'm picking Manny Machado to get a hit, and I'm picking Xander Bogaerts to get a hit. Both of them have been excellent or I should say over the last month. I think just when you're facing a pitch to contact offense, that's the bet I'm going to be making. And once again, nothing beats, DraftKings pick six. I encourage everyone to check it out. Just pick more or less on the stats for two or more of your favorite players, and boom, you're in the mix for some big cash prizes. Nail your picks and you're heating up. Pick six brings upside with payouts up to 500 times. Pick six from DraftKings is the most fun way to play fantasy sports. Download the DraftKings Pick Six app now and use code FOUL. That's code FOUL for new customers to get a special sign-up offer. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick Six from DraftKings.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see picksix.draftkings.com/promos.
All right, Katie, just as we wrap up here, final thoughts on this series and what you'll be watching for most. I know for me, it's probably going to be, I just want to see Mike Shildt. We see that extra something come out during the series.
I love the Padres series. I started my career as a Padres intern. Shout out AJ Casavel, who's my boss at MLB.com. So it's always fun to see some old friends come to Busch Stadium. I still keep in contact with all of the writers there, of course. Cal, you're familiar with all of them. It's just a great group. But yeah, for me, it's a little different because I very much believe this series could make or break my season. I'm going to go from maybe covering a contender to, and I say contender loosely, trust me, to maybe looking at a selling team. And that completely alters how you cover a team for the rest of the season. So for me, it's not just about the series. It's about what this means for the rest of the season. We said it. The Padres could very much take their Cardinals' fate in their own hands and kind of dictate what's going to happen before the trade deadline. And then we'll know exactly that because the Cardinals go to Petco Park the day after the trade deadline for a 3-game series. So Padres will get to see exactly what they did shortly after the deadline. But for me, it hinges so much on the next 2 months more than I think I'm ready to realize at the moment.
Yeah, from the Padres perspective, again, just continuing to build the case to add not just a little bit at the deadline, but add aggressively at the deadline. If they have a good series against the Cardinals, and again, they have not been great on the road or against teams that are above 500. And the Cardinals have obviously been above 500 most of the year. The Padres at home are a very different team than on the road. So if they can go into a tough place to play, as St. Louis is, especially in July when it's humid as all heck, and actually pull out a series win there against a team that has been above 500 over the course of the year, it will just build the case that, yes, this is a team worth investing in. Whereas if they go in and drop 3 or 4, the calculus changes a little bit. So I do think while maybe it's not as dire of a series as it is for the Cardinals, I do think directionally it will help establish which way the Padres should go. So in a way for both teams, this is going to be a very, very important series. And I'm sure we will see that play out on the field with the quality of baseball we see.
I couldn't agree more. And look, it's going to be exciting either way, right? Because it's not just the games that we're looking at, it's what it means for the rest of the season. So a lot at stake over this 4-game set at Busch Stadium.
Absolutely. Well, Katie, I think that will do it for this special crossover episode of Friar Territory and Cardinal Territory. Thank you so much for joining me today. It was great talking ball with you as always.
You too, Kyle, and hey, go Sun Devils.
Always. All right, everyone, this has been another edition of Friar Territory and Cardinal Territory. Go ahead and give us a review on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, whatever platform you're watching and listening on. Follow me on Twitter, follow Katie on Twitter. We will both be covering games together when the Cardinals come to LA to face the Dodgers and when they come to San Diego to face the Padres. So you can follow us together at the same games.
Yay.
Once again, thank you again for watching and listening. Have a good one.